Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Lewis Speaks 2023, and today I want to talk to you all about father wounds. Lately I've just been on this spiritual journey, trying to unpack so many different things, trying to understand my past, trying to understand why I do what I do. Um, I've been thinking a lot about my father, as you've probably seen in past videos. Um, my father left when I was 3. He would make guest appearances in and out of my life, oftentimes during critical periods, like when I learned to tie my shoe or when I learned to ride a bike. And just not having him as a consistent presence in my life, it really, it harmed me in so many different ways. Not having access to him when I really needed to talk about certain things and having to rely on the stories that other people had of him. And I realized something. Oftentimes, when you're trying to trace back your roots and you speak with different people about who your father was, they can only tell you who they thought he was. They don't really know him. And to be honest, my father may not have known himself. He may not have even known who he was. So you're relying on the testimonies of other people and how they experienced him. That may not have been who he actually was. That may have been his representative, the person that he was showing to the world. But that's not necessarily who he was. And so, in trying to understand my father and trying to understand myself, I realized that sometimes you'll never fully understand what somebody was going through because even they don't understand it half the times. So I'm left to deal with these feelings of confusion and this feeling of loneliness, trying to, gather all the pieces and put together all the pieces to form a mosaic and a portrait of what my father may have been like. And the reality is, I may never know what he was like. I can only know him through the testimonies of other people. And I've spoke to him before, but at this point, due to the drug use and the years of sustained drug use, he's just not in a position to really offer me any insight. I don't know if you've ever dealt with somebody who has used drugs for years, but they oftentimes have this very clouded presentation, very dulled presentation. Their mood, their affect is totally off. They have this very just in a haze type mentality, and it's just hard to get any real answers. I know that, not having a father can affect a young man in so many different ways. You know, some young men, what they do is they overcompensate by adopting a hypermasculine identity. They become overly masculine, they become stoic, they become who they think a man is. And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have men like myself who over identify with their mothers, who over identify with feminine energy. And so oftentimes it's resulted in them having a lot of feminine mannerisms growing up because they've watched their mothers interact with other men. And so they saw how to do that. I saw my mother and how she interacted with men, but when I tried to do that, I was called names like faggot, sissy, you know? And I realized that there's so many young men that are experiencing this. They don't have a proper male role model in their life. Their masculinity is in question. When you don't have a proper male role model in your life, your masculinity will always be in question. You'll always struggle with feelings of inadequacy about your maleness. Am I man enough? You know? Um, And so that's why I think a father in the home is extremely necessary to serve as a role model. Many days I wish my father would have come back for me, would have grabbed my hand and said, you know something, you're not going to talk to my son like this. I'm taking my son with me. Would have stood up for me, would have provided me with a role model, would have protected me, would have protected my masculine identity. And that's what fathers have to realize, that when you are in the home, you protect your son's masculinity from the onslaught of negative attitudes and feelings towards masculinity. Because I realized that my grandmother and my mom, they could only be who they were. They were women. They were women. They could only be who they were, and they could only share their experiences with men, or share their experiences about men, and I know that they didn't really have a space to process these experiences oftentimes. As the men were not there long enough to really hear what they had to say, so they oftentimes use their sister circles to really heal. But in their healing, I would be within earshot and I would hear all the negative attitudes and beliefs about masculinity and about men. And so I unconsciously incorporated that within my own belief system. And that's how the tapes formed. Not to trust men. Men are not to be relied upon. Men are not to be, but trusted. You can't depend on them. Men leave. So I got all these false beliefs about what it meant to be a man, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like the men that these women were talking about. I don't want to be the kind of men that hurt women. And so I chose not to even deal with women because I was afraid I would hurt them, And this is where I think my gay identity formed, because I was so afraid of hurting women and inconveniencing them and being an intrusion in their lives that I completely missed the point. I missed the point of what it meant to love on a woman, to really care for a woman, And so I just stopped. It was a fear. It was a fear of hurting women that led me into the arms of men. Because men, I didn't think that they would be hurt. Truth be told, I didn't think that they could be hurt. They're men. How could they be hurt if they leave you? If they hurt you, they must not have a heart. They must not have emotion. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I got with them because they're tough. Men are tough. They could deal with it. They can handle it. So I had all these false beliefs about my own masculinity, and that's why it's important. It is so important for a man to be in the house. As I mentioned before, on the opposite end of that spectrum is the overcompensation, the hypermasculinity, in an effort to offset any accusations about your sexuality, or there's this alpha male mentality that a lot of men adopt, and that's not healthy either, because truth be told, it just perpetuates the myth of men that they're stoic, don't have any emotions, which is not true. A lot of our men nowadays, we need tenderness, but we're not granted that tenderness because of these false beliefs that men don't cry, men are strong, men are able to buck up and hold up against anything. And truth is, a lot of our men are breaking down. They're breaking down under the weight of these false notions and these false beliefs. And I needed my father. I needed my father in my life to help challenge those beliefs. And he was not around. He was not around. My uncles at the time, they were either womanizers, incarcerated, infected, or dead. I didn't have any. I had 5 uncles, and not one of them took an interest in me. Not one of them took an interest in me. And when I would talk to them, they would always wonder why I had such feminine mannerisms. They didn't realize that growing up in a home, a predominantly female-run home, they don't understand how that affects a young man. They don't understand how not having access to a same gendered parent really influences a child's development. They don't get that. Even now, I think a lot of people don't understand how that really influences a child's development. You know, representation is everything. And when you don't see yourself represented within certain spaces, it becomes hard to stay yourself within those spaces. I'll say that again. When you don't see yourself represented within certain spaces, it becomes hard to stay yourself within certain spaces. And I think that it was hard to maintain my masculine presentation because oftentimes I would be compared to my father. Oh, you're just like him, you acted just like him, you did, and if my father was a person that was inconsistent, untrustworthy, unreliable, undependable, if he were those things, I would constantly be blamed. And the transference of the energy and the feelings that you had towards him will be transferred onto me. And I think a lot of sons have to carry that burden. When the father leaves, they're left to be the surrogate husbands to their mothers. They're left to be the confidants, the therapists, the caretakers for their mothers. We, in effect, have to be partners to our mothers when that was his job. See, that was my father's job, to be a partner to my mother. But once again, he was not there. So I had to step up. And so many young boys they've had to step up and take on new roles and responsibilities because the dads weren't there. And it's this parentification that happens. What is parentification? It's when a child has to take on adult responsibilities because the adults are not present. They're not there. So the child has to become an adult way before their time. And I think a lot of young boys struggle with that. This is why I know that when I speak to a lot of gay men, a lot of them struggle with responsibility. They don't want anything that resembles responsibility because for so long they've been taking responsibility for their mother's feelings, for their grandmother's feelings, for their aunts, all that. And so they just want a relationship that allows them to be a child, to be irresponsible sometimes, to be reckless, to have fun. They never got to have fun. A lot of people are in their second childhoods as adults because they never got to have a child. They never got to enjoy their childhoods. A lot of our childhoods are nothing but shooting galleries, freaking war zones, danger zones. We can never enjoy comfort zones. We're too busy battling danger zones. And like I said, my mom, she did an amazing job, all things considered. She did an amazing job. But I know that she must have been tired of always going it alone, not having the benefit of a partner. I could only imagine how she may have wanted to go out on the town, how she may have wanted to enjoy life, but she couldn't have because she had children. She had children to raise. She had responsibilities. I think my parents were really too young to have kids. They were too young. They had me in their early 20s. And I think you should be having kids, truth be told, when you are in your 30s, after you have gotten past the bloom of your youth, after you have went to the nightclubs and enjoyed the nightlife and gotten that out of your system, then you're ready to focus, buckle down, and have a family. That's how it's supposed to be, but we're just living, all of us, I feel, in this world, are just living very imbalanced lives. Many of us don't have the support system of a family who can serve as a village to give you a break and to give parents a break. And so parents are just breaking down. They're breaking down because they don't have the village. The village nowadays is full of pedophiles, creeps, abusers, womanizers, people that are giving the children the wrong message. So it's like these days, you have to be careful about where you're sending your kid, And so I've just been thinking a lot about the fathers and where they're at. Where are our fathers? They need to step up. They need to actually show up. And I see, to be honest, I see in this generation more and more fathers starting to step up. And I'm glad to see that. I really am. I'm glad to see them pushing the strollers, taking their daughters and their sons out to places, giving the mothers a break, being a real positive influence. Because my generation, as an 80s baby, our fathers got swept away by crack, got swept away by cocaine, got swept away by drugs, alcohol. You know, the home was lopsided. Many homes, not just mine, many homes were lopsided as a result of addiction. I lost my father to heroin addiction. You know, to my knowledge, he's still alive today, banging on phones, trying to get loose change out of these phones. But it's just like, I could have used his guidance. I could have used his investment. And you know something? Now, even at the tender age that I'm at, I'm looking for male mentorship. I'm looking for positive male role models, positive male association. And this is transparency 101 here. I have difficulties connecting with other men. If it's not through the conduit of seduction, if it's not about sex or penetration, I don't know how to relate to men. That's just how it is. If it's not about them wanting me or desiring me sexually, I don't know how to relate to men. And there are so many gay men who are like me, who they don't know how to relate to men unless there's an element of seduction, desire. And that, to me, that leads to broken connections, you know, and connections that prematurely end because they're not based on things that last, you know? And so I'm learning how to reconnect with men in a non-sexual context. I'm learning how to really enjoy men and lean into that energy in a non-sexual context, because the thing about it is, this is why so many of our men are dying of AIDS and HIV. I'm just going to put it out there. So many of our men are getting venereal disease because we're trying to relate to one another in a sexual context, and we are just hurting each other. There's so many new cases of men who are diagnosed with HIV, and the reason why is because they're trying to get that connection from men, and they don't know how to connect unless it's through sex. And so they're going out here, you know, as we speak, it's MLK Day. So that means that a lot of gay men are going to Atlanta, making a pilgrimage to Atlanta to have their walls destroyed and to be stretched out. And the symbolism behind all that, when you peek behind all that reckless, destructive behavior, is the need for connection, the need for love and tenderness. A lot of these men that I talk to, and this is not everybody's story, I just want to make it clear. There are some gay men who have fathers, you know, but I know for the most part, a lot of the gay men, I would say like 98% of the gay men that I have talked to, they either don't have a father figure in their life, their father left them when they were little, their father died, so they never really had a chance to establish that relationship with them, or their father was in the home, but he was distant, cold, and a satellite dad, just circling the family, never really invested or involved in his child's life. And so he circled the family, orbited the family, but never really was invested, never really stood up and was the provider, protector, disciplinarian that the child needs. So a lot of these boys are going out here looking to be disciplined by these strange men who are masochists and sadists. You know, these men are looking to be disciplined by a bunch of sadists, men who are angry at men. Because you have that. A lot of gay men are angry at their fathers. And so they transfer that anger onto each other. They're angry at their dad. Unconsciously, they're pissed. And that anger is buried. It translates into hurt. It translates into rage. And a lot of these men out here, truth be told, they're raging out. And you can see how they want to inject their rage into another boy. They don't want to love these boys. They don't want to hold these boys down. They just want to basically hurt these boys and do to these boys what they feel their father has done to them. It's a lot of transference. When you think about it, a lot of transference. And this is why I think that it's important for men. They got to heal. You got to heal, because you're going to continue to transfer your anger and frustrations onto these men, creating a karma profile that you can probably never recover from. Let's talk about that for a minute. The karma profile that I'm talking about is this. You're going around hurting all these boys. All these boys. That's going to come back to haunt you. That's going to come back to haunt you, because thing about it is, what you plant is what you grow. What you reap is what you sow. You're creating your karma profile every time you go out here recklessly hurting boys back to back to back to back to back, one after the other, thinking that you're getting away. You're not. You're not getting away. And the reason why you hurt these boys is, of course, because you have that unhealed father wound, that unhealed wound. But it's still no justification. That does not give you a license to continue to hurt other boys and other men. It doesn't. But a lot of our boys are hurting. So hurt people hurt people. This is why you have to take responsibility for your healing. This is why I have been sitting with myself since Saturday. Just sitting with myself, doing this work, thinking about my father, thinking about, what harm not having him in my life caused me, and how that harm plays out in other spaces, be it my relationships with other men, my relationships with women, my relationships with my employers and employees, my job, my spiritual life. How does that affect every domain? Because it does. It's all relative. It really is all relative. When you really get down to the meat of things, it's relative. And so just sitting with yourself to really process the ways in which your father wound shows up. And this is the funny thing about healing. Even when you think that you have dealt with it and made progress, your wounds will always test you to see just how much progress you've actually made. And so a lot of times you'll be convicted and charged with taking tests to see just how much you've healed. And it's frustrating because sometimes when I feel as though I'm taking like 2 good steps forward in my healing journey, then I take 5 steps back, and then I'm back to feeling lost and confused. This is part of the journey. This is part of the healing process. Sometimes you will take 2 steps back, 10 steps backwards, and you have to really just keep on pushing through it. And sometimes that could be so hard because you just feel like giving up. You just feel like, I'll never be whole. I'll never be together. But the thing about it is this: you can't give up, because you never lost if you don't give up. You never lose if you don't give up. You have to keep on going on your journey. And this is why I keep on going, keep on examining, keep on peeling back new layers of insight. Because this is hard. This is hard even as an adult male. Sometimes you feel, when you're in spaces with men, right? You feel rejected, You're working with male coworkers and you don't know how to relate to them on certain levels. It makes you feel all over again like my father's rejecting me, And so that opens up new wounds, You try to make friends with other men and try to relate with other men, but yet and still you find it a struggle. You find it a struggle and you feel, once again, this is another rejection. It's my father rejecting me all over again. This is why I think some gay men, they take it real personal when they're at the clubs or at certain spaces and they're trying their best to get the attention and the adoration of another man, but that man is not paying them any attention. They feel, once again, this is a rejection, and they get angry. Some get downright indignant because that anger response is basically that wound reactivated again. It's that wound that constantly stays reactivated. And that's why people get reactive. because it's that unhealed material that still rests in that person. And of course, you have to realize that that person is not rejecting you. They don't know you, but still it feels that way because you transferred. Once again, that's that transference. You know, sometimes I thought to myself when I was dating, once upon a time when I was dating men, I said, maybe this one can be the one to help me heal from my father. Maybe he could be the father I never had. Maybe he could be the love story that I never had with my dad. You know? Maybe this one could show me the beauty of what being a man looks like and what that means. And these men never did. What they showed me is what I believe to be true all along, that men are unreliable, men are not to be trusted, men are dangerous, men live to destroy things. You know, so they only reinforce those beliefs. And that's why, please, man, you have got to realize the power that you have. You have the power to overturn negative beliefs about men. You have the power to be the father that these men never had. Your presence can be the change and can be the healing that these boys need. They don't need another boy to bring them into their bed, use them up, stretch their holes out, and then ship them out. They don't need another boy to do that. They've got plenty of bad memories to last them a lifetime. They need men and boys who are going to actually be stable, consistent, reliable, to help challenge those beliefs that they have. We heal in relationship with one another. That's what we do. We heal in relationship with one another. And so if you have a good male friend or a father figure or a male mentor, that mentorship experience can mean the difference between you just falling by the wayside and becoming a success story. Just having that positive influence can make a world of difference. It can make a world of difference. And that's what we don't realize as men. We don't realize the power that we hold to unlock this trauma. Because there's a lot of father trauma. There's a lot of father wounds that these men, and I see it. That's the thing, you see that you clear as day. And yes, everybody's different, and the wound will manifest and look different on everybody. It will not carry the same scar. It will not. It will look different on every single one, but you have got to realize, you know that there's a father wound present when, and here's how to identify, when these men are in serial relationships constantly, one after the other, after the other, after the other. You know, when these men go out there hurting other men, they're unable to really attach. They have intimacy issues. They're unable to really demonstrate real intimacy with these men. They engage in reckless behaviors, excessive drinking, drug use, promiscuity. You know, these are the hallmarks of the father wound, you know? So it's time we heal. It's just time we heal, because this ain't getting us nowhere. There's so many of our talented young men and boys who are being sucked down the drain. They're actually circling the drain, even as we speak. These young men are circling the drain, just circling. Trying their best to find their fathers in these dark bars, dark clubs, dark spaces, sex parties, circuit parties, Grindr. They're just looking for their fathers in these dark, soulless, godless spaces. And what they're finding is the devil. That's what they're finding. They're finding the devil and his demons. And it's just eating them up. They're being sold faulty goods, and they're being told that they could find love here, they could find happiness here. But the reality is, what they're finding is they're finding their own death. They're signing their own death certificates. That's what they're signing. They're finding the grave, and it's just not working out. It's not working out. So you know something, it's time to heal. It's time to sit with ourselves. We're being charged in this generation with the opportunity to heal, because this right now, what we're living in, is called the truth generation. A lot of truths are being unearthed. We are coming face to face with a lot of truth, a lot of myths that we once believed are being debunked. We are being charged with the responsibility to see now. We're seeing a lot of mysteries are being revealed, and we are seeing the truth. And so as we see the truth, we're going to notice that there's a lot of wars, a lot of angry people, a lot of rage. You know, it's going to look very very different, because as you tell the truth, people are not going to like you. They're not going to like you. But the thing about it is this: you have to live in the truth, because the truth will set you free. We've been in bondage to the lie for so long. It's time to come out of the lie and step into the truth. So this is Lewis Speaks 2024, wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful day. Peace, y'all.